Of course, Stacey Peterson remains missing. Authorities have not charged Drew Peterson in that case, but Drew Peterson does face his peers next week in the death of Kathleen Savio. Let's talk more about Drew Peterson and the changes that we have seen since he first emerged in 2007. In-session field producer Michael Christian is here with us. He has interacted with Peterson on several occasions. In-session law enforcement analyst and contributor Mike Brooks, who was in Illinois yesterday, now back in Atlanta, and criminal defense attorney Dan Conaway stays with us as well as we continue to open up this discussion. Let's start with you, Michael. You saw him just recently in court again for the first time. Give us a sense of how he has changed over the years and specifically during his incarceration.
Well, as you see on that clip that we just showed Larry King Live, he was very well groomed, very articulate, very well put together. The last few pretrial hearings, he didn't look like that. He had gotten a little puffier, which I certainly understand after 3 years of eating jailhouse food. He was not clean shaven. His hair was a bit shaggier. That has changed now with jury selection, Ted. He is again well groomed. The facial hair is completely gone, not even the mustache anymore. He's been very well dressed. I'm sure he fits his clothes so much better, so he looks a little bit thinner. It's a great Drew Peterson to put forward for this jury. You know, the defense wants the jury to see him and like him, and I think this was a great step in that direction.
Mike Brooks, how would you describe who Drew Peterson is?
Well, you know, Ted, I was just out there for a number of days, and I was in Bolingbrook, I was in Chicago, Joliet, all around Chicago area. But when I was in Bolingbrook, I ran into somebody that knew Drew Peterson for over 30 years. And I said, look, what is and who is Drew Peterson? You know, who is he? What do we know about him? He goes, well, what you see on TV is what you get. Sometimes he's arrogant, sometimes he's funny, and sometimes he's abrasive. He said, but that's true. He said that's the way he is. But he also went on to say that he never thought that Drew Peterson could be capable of anything like that. But no matter where you go, Ted, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion of what his involvement is, where Stacey Peterson, wife number 4, where her body's buried. Everybody has an opinion in that town. But I think they were able to get at least 12 people who didn't have an opinion and will look at it and look at all the facts of the case with objectivity and come to a conclusion, hopefully.
I know you were talking to some folks over at the Bolingbrook police the police department, where he was an officer for 30 years about. What's their take on this? Are they behind one of their own, or have they washed their hands of him?
You know, they really won't say. When you ask them about the case, they say, hey, we turned it over to Illinois State Police. We, recused ourselves of it, have nothing to do with it. But it seems to me they want this to just go away. Because who ever heard of really Bolingbrook Police Department? Bolingbrook, Illinois, before all this happened, before this 29-year veteran of the Bolingbrook Police Department, Ted, was involved in something like this. I think they just want it to go away and want the media and the media spotlight, the media attention to also just go away.
Dan, do you like a client with a big personality?
That can be good or that can be bad. And so it's not so matter as liking or disliking. It's more simply that you have the client you have and you frame your defense in part, not in all, but in part around the personality of your client. And you have to do it. And obviously, I think his defense team in this case has done a really good job of that. And I certainly understand why Mr. Peterson's feeling more positive, because at least now we can go forward and have the trial. And I've had so many clients over the years say, look, I am so tired of waiting. I'm so glad that at least we're at trial now. I get my day in court, and thank goodness for that. So, here we go. Let's have this trial. Let's get through the innuendo. Let's see what happened. And as far as who Drew Peterson has, for one thing for sure, it's rare that you get a defendant in a criminal case where you have so much airtime with that person on the air, talking with reporters, really being cross-examined by reporters, like you saw in that last clip where he's trying to get into his car and they're hitting him with these specific questions. Where were you on the 28th? Things like that. And so we're really getting a chance to see Drew Peterson, who he is, and now we'll see how this trial goes. And for Mr. Peterson, I've got to say, I would think that he would be glad it's going to trial. And I think certainly for the people of his hometown, And for the police department, they would be ready to go to trial too. Let's have the trial.
Absolutely. Michael, what stands out after interacting with him about Drew Peterson to you?
You know, he's just so jovial. It's amazing, Ted. You know, because he's been in jail now for 3 years, and you'd think he'd be sick of this whole thing. And he comes in at every hearing. He immediately scans the room to see who he knows. He recognizes reporters and smiles at them. He's smiled at me several times. We've had an exchange. He's very good with the bailiffs and the courtroom deputies. You know, he still, I think, thinks of himself as a policeman, so these are his brothers. And he's just very chipper every time he comes into one of these things. It's amazing that he still has that attitude.
Okay, it'll be interesting to see what kind of attitude he has in the courtroom, of course, as this trial proceeds in front of the jury. Well, Drew Peterson is on trial for the murder of his third wife, Kathleen Savio, and his fourth wife's family believes he's responsible for her death, too. Stacey Peterson's aunt is going to tell us why she thinks that coming up.